Niners will walk out to midfield, and Kyle Shanahan will greet his friend Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur has beaten the 49ers 3 or 4 times now in the regular season, but of course 0-3 against Kyle in the playoffs, and that'll be the game. The Niners wind up losing here in Green Bay by a score of 38-10.
That was the sounds last week. Niners getting walloped in Green Bay. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. I'm here in our studios in downtown San Francisco at KNBR. John Dickinson, super reporter, boots on the ground, is in Buffalo weathering the storm. And I mean that figuratively and literally, trying to get into the broadcast booth there to do the show and trying to get through the storm in Buffalo to the stadium, to Orchard Park, to get out there for the Niners and the Buffalo Bills Sunday Night Football, a 5:20 kickoff. We'll have it for you right here on the Sports Leader. Brock Purdy scheduled to go today. That's the report. That's what's out there. Brandon Allen on standby in case he's got to get in there. But it's going to be a cold one. JD, how is it, man? Well, how have you navigated it so far? You were sending me some videos and some photos. You said it's getting better, and then you sent me a video of like a bunch of snow, like, I don't know, knee-high, covering a door, like you were trying to get through on your way into the booth?
Yeah, that is better, considering where it was a couple of hours ago and apparently yesterday here in Orchard Park. And one of the things I've learned in the day and a half that I've been in Buffalo is the difference in weather patterns and microclimates. We know about the microclimates in the Bay, right? It could be 30 degrees warmer in the city than it is maybe 10 miles outside of the city in San Francisco if you're maybe headed toward the East Bay somewhere. Well, Buffalo to Orchard Park, Buffalo very light, if any, flurries in downtown Buffalo, which is where I'm staying here yesterday and through today. But Orchard Park just gets dumped by this lake effect snow, given where it is in proximity to the lake. And it creates these snow pockets where it just absolutely, for hours at a time, will dump. And that's exactly what's happened multiple different times here over the last 24 hours. And a light version of that on the ride from Buffalo to Orchard Park here, where it is currently 29 degrees and cloudy, some light flurries falling. But no, most of the damage, according to the weather report, has already been done. There are sections of Highmark Stadium, Copes, that are just absolutely loaded with snow, and they're trying to shovel it out the best they can, but fans are coming in. They're going to be standing anyway, as they often do here, I'm told, at Highmark Stadium, but they're going to be clearing their own seats as they attempt to clear the field. The tarp had been on when I first arrived. They've pulled it to about the 50-yard line right now. They're blowing some snow off of the tarp, and it looks like, all things considered, an icy and potentially slick field. But I think most of the snow has come and gone for the day, at least as far as the projections go. And it's just going to be an icy, cold event here for the 49ers and the Bills tonight. So I woke up today thinking about this game, and I know people are down on the 49ers, and reason to be, with good reason, after what happened last week and the way the season has gone to this point. But I was looking for, I just want positive things today. I'm just looking for some positive things. And we'll start with Brock Purdy's playing. Mooney Ward is playing. Christian McCaffrey, we've seen some bursts of him, though we'll talk about some of the metrics on him and the lack of speed that we've seen to this point this year. And I was talking to Matt Maiocco earlier this week about that, and he said we haven't seen anything that looks like Christian McCaffrey of old because there hasn't been any running lanes or him to get free, see some of that top speed. But in terms of positives today, Brock Purdy expected to play and Mooney Ward back for the first time in several weeks. It will help the secondary. The question is, how much will you be thrown at today? Is weather going to be a factor, you think, where that comes into play? Because you were just saying, not a lot of flurries there, not a lot of terrible weather in terms of what we're seeing in the stadium. At least it sounds like right now. Cold and windy is what I think it would project.
So it may play a role in the pass game.
Yeah, so I think it could play a role in the pass game. And look, I think you might make the case that it helps the 49ers, at least initially, and that it might limit some of the aerial attack of the Bills. Although, as we talked about last week, and we've talked about really every week throughout the course of the season, teams are always going to try to run against the 49ers. But as far as if the Niners can offensively, create a little bit of space for Christian McCaffrey to run, maybe finally be able to get Deebo Samuel involved in the running game. Maybe this could be a limited possession type of a game where the running game and the ball control helps keep the Bills' offense off the field, and the weather and the elements maybe keep the Bills' offense from functioning at the level that it can when all things are clicking. So I think as much as it's cold and it could be windy and maybe there are some flurries that fall between now and kickoff or during the game, but I think it's something where the 49ers almost have to convince themselves, Copes, that it helps them, because anytime it helps, any kind of weather element levels the playing field from maybe a team that's more talented or having a better year than the other team. So I think that's got to be the mindset for the Niners heading into this one is, try to get that ground attack going. You at least get Brock Purdy back to manage the game and hope that the elements can work in their favor.
I would tend to agree with you in that, I think everybody knows that when weather comes into play, it levels the playing field, because not everybody can use all of their weapons. And if your weapons weren't as good as the other teams anyway, then maybe you can do some of that. We saw the Browns beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in a blizzard game last week, right, or a week and a half ago or something. So, it does level that. The issue is the downside of today for the 49ers. They'll still be without their top two corners, so Mooney Ward is going to play. Demo Lenore ruled out in this one. He left last week's game and then came back into the game. Nick Bosa and Trent Williams will miss their second consecutive games, and then Aaron Banks is going to be out as well. I mean, now two guys out on the offensive line, and Aaron Banks is a guy that you want out there. The offensive line, which I think people take great exception with anyway, and then you're missing a guy who's played fairly well. I know Pooney had a tough game last week, and then, of course, Trent Williams on the left side. But we're talking about trying to level it here and go to what the 49ers do well, and that's run the football, and they have not at all in the last couple of weeks. Last week, game script got away from them. But when you're not having your top offensive lineman out there, I mean, you can't have Trent go if he's not able to go. But the injuries continue to pile up, and it makes it really, really tough to try to find avenues as to where the 49ers can be successful, especially after what we saw against an inferior team to the Bills in the Packers last week.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you can say it levels the playing field all you want, but you've still got Josh Allen on the other side there, and he's somebody when all else fails,
right,
can just take off and run. And this is another one of those games where the 49ers are at a significant rest disadvantage. The Bills 2 weeks ago, right here at Highmark Stadium, knocked off the Chiefs, handing Kansas City their first and still only loss of the season. And they had their bye last week while the 49ers were traveling to Green Bay and then back home for a week of practice during the Thanksgiving holiday and then all the way back on Friday from the Bay Area out here to Western New York. So the Bills are rested and at a point where they're really trying to make a final push toward having the road to the Super Bowl run through this stadium if they can win out and the Chiefs will ever actually lose a close game, even though they basically threaten to lose every single week and don't. But the Bills have high hopes set on maybe getting a number one seed, and we've seen the Niners at different points when they've had that rest disadvantage. It's come into play, maybe at a minimum, making some games closer when the 49ers were playing at a higher level and healthier than we would have expected. It opened the door, I think, for Seattle to hang around in that game a couple of weeks ago that the Seahawks ultimately won, which goes down as a really bad loss for the 49ers as they head toward the stretch run. So that's also, in addition to the elements, I think something to keep an eye on for this one. It's the rest advantage that the Bills have in a year where the 49ers seemingly have had very few advantages, if any.
Well, you mentioned Brock Purdy. You mentioned Josh Allen. I mentioned that Brock Purdy's expected to be out there today, and we'll talk about him and Josh Allen here. It's time now for the QB comparison, sponsored by Friedman's Appliance, proudly serving all of Northern California with a wide selection of luxury appliances. Visit them in Pleasant Hill to see the Friedman's difference, and by Dolce Vita Tequila pure and simple. So with Purdy questionable, we saw what Brendan Allen could do last week. So, I mean, again, I don't want to say be prepared to see him, but we just don't know how severe that shoulder is for Brock. Early in the week, I thought his status was really, really in jeopardy, and then he ended up throwing and participating in practice late in the week. Kyle said he was expecting him to go, and Adam Schefter reported that last night. Allen, again, I don't think he was the reason they lost last week, but if he's out there, I don't know how much the game plan changes, which is why I think he's the number 2 in case Brock goes out there, gets banged up again, and for some reason he's got to take some snaps. On the year, Brock, 66% completion, 26-13 is the passing yardage, 13 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. He's been sacked a lot, 20 times this year. He does have 267 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns for 5.2 a carry on the ground, and 22 first downs on the ground as well. Josh Allen, though, the MVP candidate. We talked last week about seeing a running back in Josh Jacobs and going, maybe they'll fare better against a guy without tons of speed, more of a bowling ball type back. Yeah, think again. Now you got one of those guys at quarterback today, Josh Allen. He's a dual threat, especially in a snow game. 64% on the season, 25-43 are the passing yards. And something he's cut down on a lot this year is the turnovers, the fumbles, and the interceptions. They haven't gone away, but he's cut them down a lot. 18 touchdowns passing to just 5 interceptions. He's only been sacked 13 times. He's got 316 rushing yards, second on the team, 5 rushing touchdowns. He's going 4.7 a carry. He didn't throw a pick, by the way, in his first 7 games of the season. He has 5, though, in the last 4 games. Something to look at.
Yeah. And I think if there is a pathway to victory, we talked about it last week, it's the fact that Allen, or like Jordan Love, can be a little turnover prone at times. And you got to be able to get him on the ground, one, but also try to get the ball out of his hands. And if he throws one to you, you got to take advantage of it. You got to catch it, maybe set up some field position, some shorter fields. And again, we talked a lot about the turnover battle last week, and the 49ers ended up losing it in just horrific fashion. 3 turnovers that led to 21 points in a game that turned into a rout pretty quickly in the 38-10 loss at Green Bay.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. I'm here in San Francisco. JD is live from Orchard Park. He's out in Buffalo getting ready for the Niners and the Buffalo Bills. Sunday Night Football, a 5:20 kickoff. We'll get more into this one. We'll also catch up with our guy Matt Maiocco a little bit later as we get closer to kickoff, and with our guy Larry Krueger, of course, of Niners Nightly and the Krueger Show, which is probably going on right now, probably competing with us before he comes on to do his hit with us. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. It's Niners and the Bills, and you can hear it only here on the Sports Leader.
Aaron Banks will be out. Jordan Elliott out. Demo Lenore out. Nick Bosa out. Trent Williams out. Greenlaw out. Flanagan Fowles questionable. Chris Conley questionable. Kevin Givens questionable. Renardo Green questionable. Brock Purdy questionable.
I guess we'll just make that the health report, sponsored by the Alameda County Sheriff's Office. The Alameda County Sheriff's Office is seeking highly motivated people to join their diverse and growing law enforcement agency. Apply at joinasco.com. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. JD live from Orchard Park out in Buffalo, getting ready for the Niners and the Bills, which you can hear right here at 520 on the Sports Leader. We do now know that Brock Purdy's going to go, but if all the guys who are out, like Demo Lenore stands out, of course, he's having a fantastic year, one game after the contract, and he goes down with the injury. You've got Trent Williams out for a second consecutive and Nick Bosa out. I guess the question I have to ask is, of the injuries we saw last week for the 49ers, what was the greatest impact on the field? Because they played so poorly across the board that is it Nick Bosa simply helping in the run game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Nick Bosa's ability to just tee up the quarterback and make an impact and maybe force turnovers. I think as far as this game goes, Lenore being out is a huge deal.
Why do you say that?
When you look at I just the fact that the Bills throw it, and I think they went after Renardo Green last week. Did the Packers, and getting Ward back, he's going to be in a good spot. I think as he gets himself back in the swing of things. But you want to have two guys that have the potential to be shut down on the outside and not get beat for big plays, which gives you a chance maybe to pick one off and force some of those turnovers that we were talking about in the first segment. So I also think Jordan Elliott being out is a big deal. I mean, we know the 49ers don't have the defensive tackles that they need to be able to stop the run, and so Elliott being out's a huge deal. But I think as far as last week, it's Lenore this week to not have that second potential shutdown corner. And look, Lenore had been playing better than Mooney Ward even before Mooney Ward had to miss due to the tragic passing of his daughter.
Well, and to your point about the amount of times the Bills pass it's just in Josh Allen's hands a whole lot no matter what, right? He had 12 carries in their last game in that win against Kansas City for 55 and a touchdown, 8 for 50 and a touchdown the week before. So back-to-back games, he scored from the quarterback spot on the ground. And here's his passing attempts just for the last 6 games. 40, 37, 39, 34, 33. Or his last 5 games, they're 25 and 30. He's only thrown fewer than 30 times on the season, 3 or 4 different times. And they're going pretty damn close to 30, sometimes and more often close to 40. Plus, he's going to hold it a lot. He's going to take it himself. So I'd imagine there will be a big passing game, and there could be a game. Last week, I want to say, 12 carries is his most all season. I think you could see more of that as we get into the colder months here and in a colder game. You could see more QB keepers, especially because the Niners have shown no ability to your point, create pressure or stop the run, especially up the middle.
Yeah, it's just problematic. It's really trouble, I think, as you look at the many things that have the potential to be trouble for the 49ers here. And I know the Bills run it better this year than they have in the last couple of years. I still think, especially considering the elements, the Bills know and believe that with Josh Allen, they can hit some big pass plays. And I do think they'll look to attack the 49ers down the field as much as you can in the elements. But I also still think that this is a game where, baseline brass tacks, smash mouth football applies, because it's applied every single week for 49er opponents, even opponents who aren't necessarily good at running the football. So I think the Niners, and with the defensive tackles that they have out and then hadn't played well either, I think they're going to have to be ready for a lot of smash mouth, up the gut, gun runs, all those kinds of things. And then you can run some keepers off of that where Josh Allen can look to make some plays, moving the pocket or just taking off and escaping. And his escapability is something that, as you've mentioned, that players, quarterbacks who have the ability to do that just absolutely murder the 49ers. Yep. Even when the 49ers have had elite defenses.
For years it's happened. Mobile quarterbacks. How long have we talked about that for mobile quarterbacks? And it's funny because to say, well, they murder the 49ers, I'd like to think, mobile quarterbacks murder a lot of teams. That's why that's a job in the NFL. It's something that people want, to be a dual threat guy who can do that. Now, the issue that I think a lot of Niner fans have is it's dual threat guys who do it in different ways. Like Josh Allen is not the same type of dual threat quarterback that, say, Lamar Jackson is, right? And he's not the same dual threat type quarterback that even Patrick Mahomes can be, and that we've seen into the postseason and the later weeks of the season where he can extend plays. Even Aaron Rodgers, you wouldn't say he was a runner, but he was certainly mobile, and he could extend and create plays when he was in the prime of his career. He actually did a little bit of that today, danced around and probably looked as healthy as we've seen him all season. The issue is that every phase of that type of quarterback, Kyler Murray included this year, has been a thorn in the Niners' side, and it's been a problem every time they see them. So to your point, when we're starting to think about, we're trying to figure out ways they win this game, and you talk about how weather can level some of the playing field a little bit. Like, can they? I don't think the Niners all season have been able to win a game if they got into a shootout. You know what I mean? So you've got go ahead.
No, I mean, I'm thinking, as you're saying it, there's a pathway to the 49ers playing this really good game, maybe force a turnover or two. They run the ball effectively, even with a banged-up offensive line, and it sets them up to where, hey, they're up 4 with 10 minutes left. And then Josh Allen makes 4 or 5 plays with his legs in the final 10 minutes and steals the game. Right?
Which is kind of what I'm looking
your best-case scenario ends in pain in that version.
Well, and I look at their last, I give you his numbers over the last 5 games where they're throwing it a lot, right? 40, 37, 39, 34, 33 are the attempts. He's also rushed for 2 touchdowns in that span, including his most carries of the season last week against Kansas City. Their point totals in those games, 30, 30, 30, 31, 34. The 2 games they lost this year, they lost back-to-back games, Baltimore and at Houston. They got shut down by Baltimore badly, 35-10. Josh Allen only threw for 180 yards. He only ran it 5 times for 21. And then at Houston, they lost 23-20. He was 9 for 30 passing. And both of those teams boast better defenses than the Niners do.
Yeah, and so I'm not sure what can necessarily be taken from any of those games. It's just, they're just so banged up. And again, just Fred Warner with the broken. By
the way, more good news. Fred Warner, dude, that blew me away. Thanksgiving week, where I was off on that news break on Wednesday. JD, maybe Wednesday.
Wednesday at his locker. Yeah. Wednesday, Fred Warner's like, I've been dealing with this for the entire year.
Did I mention that I've had a broken ankle and I've just been playing? Did I mention that to you guys?
Yeah.
That's it's incredible. The level of pain tolerance for pro athletes in general, but for guys in the NFL, like the way we talk about how they've got to get out there and do this, or this guy's not getting this job done, to not know what so many guys are dealing with couldn't believe that was just more good news for the Niners, but 2, that he was playing at the level he was playing at early in the season. I know that we've heard Kyle say that in the last couple of weeks. Now Fred's still playing at an elite level. He just looks exhausted, or like he's the only guy out there, but clearly there's other stuff going on.
Yeah, and it's a fracture. Yeah, he was so matter of fact about it, and I think it definitely explains. And look, he was probably getting sick of people kind of wondering what's wrong with Fred Warner. And now, typically, it's something that you don't see a player or a team acknowledge until the end of the season. So I thought the timing was a little bit peculiar at that. But Fred Warner has clearly not looked like Fred Warner after a flat-out all-pro beginning to the season, and I had basically speculated that it had a lot to do with the fact that he didn't have his running mate in Dre Greenlaw, and teams have really attacked the linebacker spot away from Fred and gone after Devondre Campbell and gone after D. Winters when he's been out there, and teams just have the ability to run on the interior part of that defensive line as well, so it makes life more difficult on the linebackers trying to go sideline to sideline and make plays. I mean, the running backs have a head of steam built up and all of that, but Warner hasn't looked like Warner. And I think there has been more of he's got to be putting this team on his back and carrying them to respectability.
So hard
defensively,
to do that.
And frankly, he has in a lot of these games. Some of the games they've let slip, they have played well enough, just not at the dominant level that we're used to, Copes.
Yeah, and I mean, he personally almost won 2 games for them this year, right? Like by himself, games 1 and 2. I mean, the fumble he forces on Bryce Young was huge, and he got the other one against who was the second fumble that he forced? Is that Minnesota?
Yeah,
he punched one out there, and then he punched it out.
Right at the goal line.
Yeah, right at the goal line. Right as he was about to go in, Jones was for a touchdown. Yeah, it's an interesting question or a thought, I guess, about putting a team on your back. Like defensively, I mentioned this last week. We were talking about it on the show, I think last week, me and Dieter, about how there are certain defensive players in the game that we call game wreckers. Like Nick Bosa, I think a lot of people believed, at least coming into this year and based on what we've seen, that he can be that guy. And they're almost always, incidentally, game wrecker is usually reserved for a mega defensive lineman, right? So J.J. Watt was one. Aaron Donald's one of the greatest of all time, of course, where it didn't really matter who else was out there. They could put a defense on their back at the line, create pressure, create mistakes, force fumbles, get sacks, whatever it may be. T.J. Watt's the best at that in football right now. The next I would say who's right there, I think Aiden Hutchinson's on his way. The next guy who's like that is Myles Garrett. Now, both of those guys are doing things this year and even last year that Nick Bosa has not really done since his first season in the league. So that's one thought. Is I think they need to get back, or Nick Bosa's got to figure out a way to get into the form that those guys are in. Because even today, T.J. Watt, they were down at one point. They lost the ball. He comes back and forces a fumble like immediately. I'm like, how do you do that? Where you decide, I'm going to go get the ball back for us, and D linemen are capable of doing that. On the flip side of things, the only person that anybody will ever say put the team on their back to is generally the quarterback on the offensive side of the ball. And I think when we look at what Brock's done relative to the elite quarterbacks in the league through his career and to this point, that's something that I think people always want to see a quarterback can do. Even though we know it to be true that no quarterback does it by themselves. However, there are moments where the rest of the team is struggling, guys are injured, you don't know who the third receiver is out there, you don't know his name, and yet the quarterback is making plays. If Brock is, while injured and has a passing shoulder injury right now and wasn't able to throw early in the week, like, is this a game where you look to him and say, if the Niners want to win a big one on the road, Brock's got to come out and have an elite-type performance? Because the other thought is, well, if he's banged up, maybe he can't make all the throws. I don't think he should be out there, or that Kyle would have him out there if he weren't going to operate the offense to the level that they know they need to win.
Yeah, and I think it was close last week. And remember, it got a little weird toward the end of the week. Everybody kind of expected that he was going to be out there in the lead up to Green Bay. And then the shoulder just didn't respond toward the end of the week. So I think, if anything, this week it was almost the opposite. And they got that second MRI done. Remember the report on Sunday morning as I was in Green Bay, and we're thinking, what's going on there? And I guess that's just a normal follow-up. But it almost feels like it was the opposite this week as opposed to last week, where as the week went on, not that he necessarily did more, but it felt better, which at least gives him an opportunity to get out there. And look, I think if the 49ers are going to win, they're going to have I don't think it's got to be a 300-yard Brock Purdy game in these elements, but it's got to be a really efficient 200-yard game where it's, run after the catch, which has seemingly been gone from this 49ers team this year. It's all been air yards, which I think has maybe led to them not being as successful or as dominant as we've seen them be in the past. But all told, Purdy's going to have to hang on to the ball, not have it slip out of his hands in the elements, which have been an issue for him at times. Anytime there's a wet ball, he's got to be able to hang on to it. He's going to have to be able to navigate through some wind in this one, and also make the plays that are there to be made in the game plan if they're going to have a shot to win this game, if they're going to have a shot where they're within one score in the fourth quarter, because I think that truly is the goal. It's put yourself in a position where you can, with one drive, go win the game or end the game if you have the lead. But there are a lot of things that are going to have to go into it. And Brock Purdy, that's price of admission for me today. Brock Purdy's going to have to play really well to where we're talking about it on the postgame, like, wow, with the injury, in those elements, that's a big time, pay the guy $55 million a year kind of a performance.
Yeah, it's always funny to me. I've told you before, it's never a big deal when a guy's kryptonite is like a certain defensive coordinator or somebody who has his number like that. It's always funny to me when a guy's kryptonite is the elements. Like, what's his kryptonite? Water, dude. Can't get his hands wet. Otherwise, Niners are in trouble. Adam Copeland, John.
That's my kryptonite.
Don't let JD get wet today, because he's out at Orchard Park in Buffalo getting ready for the Bills and the 49ers. We'll catch up with our NBC Sports 49ers insider, Matt Maiocco, when he joins us next as the Niners get ready for the Bills Sunday Night Football 5:20 kick, and we'll have it for you on the Sports Leader.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you go through an injury and stuff like that, you want to know what's going on with your body and you know how long something could be, or if something's serious or not, if you're healthy or not. So all those things definitely ran through my mind, but glad everything was clean within the MRI and knowing that we had a plan to get ready for this week, and I'm ready to go now. So.
That's the voice of Brock Purdy, talking about getting ready to play today. The report is Brock Purdy will play after being questionable. He is questionable, I guess, listed coming into this one against the Buffalo Bills. And we were just talking about how you're going to need to score some points today to beat the Bills. I don't know that you'll need 30 to beat them, but that's about what they're revving at right now, is 30-plus, and they've scored 30 in 3 consecutive games. Niners have obviously struggled offensively, 17 against the Packers and just 10 points against 17 against the Seahawks and just 10 points against the Packers last week. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. I think we're trying to connect with our guy Matt Maiocco, or he's trying to connect. He's trying to connect with us, is what I'm told.
Yeah, he's having the issue that I had about 90 minutes ago, in that the general credential didn't allow. It's rare that this will happen, but to take people behind the curtain, the credential access for the broadcast booth is a different level than, I guess, the general media credential. Like, you need special access to get to the broadcast booth, and so I was denied initially. Had to make a couple of contacts and
JD made a few phone calls, and then now he's in the booth. But you know who's not is our guy Matt Maiocco, because he's joining us courtesy of the UMA guest line. Matt, what is this shoddy fly-by-night organization they're running at Orchard Park? What's going on here, man?
Well, I think they are building a new stadium, so I think that's
outdoor,
probably long overdue. Yes,
they're building an outdoor stadium again.
Yes,
I believe so. Yeah,
hell of a move.
Yeah, right next door.
Yeah, right next door.
Hell of a move. The Rams were like, not us.
and here's the interesting thing that I just learned on this trip. Of course, I've only been here. You know, they play in Buffalo. Actually, it's Orchard Park, which is key to the story I'm going to tell.
Sure.
They only play here every 8 years, and so I've never really dealt with any kind of weather conditions in Buffalo. But what I found out is the weather in downtown Buffalo is completely different than what the weather is 10 miles away, due to something that I just learned about called the lake effect, where basically it's where the weather comes in and where the snow comes in is like this band right off Lake Erie. And you move, like literally today when we were driving to the game from downtown Buffalo to Orchard Park, it was completely like no snow whatsoever in Buffalo. And then about 2 miles outside of Buffalo, boom, the snow started, and it was a slow crawl all the way to Orchard Park and to the stadium. So it's really bizarre. I'm sure John has been telling you all about it.
Yeah, we're talking about
it. Yeah, like what the conditions are in the stadium. I would guess once the game starts, you won't even tell. Like the field will be green. I don't know how much grass there's or how much snow there's going to be, but outside it's pretty crazy.
Well, we were talking about and we were saying, you know, when you end up with a snow game or big elements like that, sometimes it'll level the playing field between an inferior team and an elite team, but it didn't sound like that was going to be a major factor. Maybe some wind could be a factor, or just the cold for the 49ers. I was also looking for positives today. I said, well, positive is that Brock's supposed to play and that Charvarius Ward is back. The negative is that nobody else is. You still got Nick Bosa out, Trent Williams out, now Demo Lenore is out for this one. What was the biggest impact in players missing last week? Was it Nick Bosa on the line for you and in creating pressure and helping with the run?
It probably was. You know, offensively, they didn't get much going either. Only scored 10 points off of Packers defense that they could have scored more points off of. I mean, I guess Bosa and certainly, well, I thought Trent Williams' replacement, I thought Jalen Moore played well. Brandon Allen wasn't, you know, he didn't play poorly. He's not the reason they lost that game. So, yeah, I would say probably the defensive part of it, losing Bosa, missing Bosa, but also I think there's like this whole cumulative effect too, where you take, you know, 4 or 5 guys out of the lineup, and you might be just like lessened as a team just a little bit by each of them, but collectively, and just the cumulative effect of that would be that you end up losing a lot in basically every area of the team.
Matt, as you look at today and no Aaron Banks at left guard, is it as simple as Spencer Burford gets slid in there, or do you think the 49ers could go in another direction?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Ben Barch. Ben Barch, who has played 7 snaps.
The big inactive is going to start today?
He is going to start.
Give it up for our guy, Ben Barch, who active for his first game last week, and he recovered that fumble, was on the stat sheet. That's our guy. Hell yeah.
Yep, absolutely. This will forever be known as the Ben Barch game, without question.
The Ben Barch game without question.
Yeah. I mean,
it is for him. It's for him. I'll tell you that.
And his family. I mean, Mom's probably thrilled.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. No, so Ben Barch, who the 49ers picked up last year off of, I think, the practice squad of the Jaguars. And so he played like 28 total snaps for the 49ers last season, and then 7 so far this year. And, he will be the starter. So Ben Barch and Jalen Moore are the starters on the left side of that offensive line.
Ben Barch will be out there. We've nicknamed him the big inactive to start the year. Now he's getting some active and some action out there. We'll see what happens with him today. In terms of Brock coming back, I was saying to JD, I wonder about limitations for a guy whenever he's hurt, and you go, well, what can he do? What can't he do? But my thought is with a quarterback, if it's a throwing shoulder, he won't be out there, I wouldn't think, unless he can do everything in the playbook or everything Kyle needs him to do in order to win.
You would think that. Yes, you would think that. The thing that, you talked about the weather being an equalizer, I don't think it's an equalizer at all, because in this particular instance, because the one thing you mentioned was the wind, and yes, it is windy. It's cold, it's windy. I don't know that, there might be a couple snow flurries, but nothing of too much significance. But the wind is a huge factor, because you have, one of the strongest arm quarterbacks in the entire NFL, and a guy who's 6'5", 250 pounds, and can run. So you have that as one quarterback on the home team, and then the visiting team has a guy who has never been known for his arm strength. And now you pile on top of that the fact that he's coming off a shoulder injury. So, I mean, that could be an issue in this game, trying to throw, especially when you're throwing into the wind.
So what's the path for the 49ers to hang in this game and win it?
Yep, I think the path is that the Buffalo Bills do not have a good run defense. And so Christian McCaffrey has to get going, and that offensive line led by Ben Barch and company, they got to get going. They got to create some holes.
Ben Barch and Jalen Moore, baby. Pitch it left. Absolutely. Let's go. Outside stretch.
No. And I think that's how the 49ers win this game. They have to get the running game going. They have to get 5-6 yards on first down when they run. They have to keep the chains moving. They have to play enough offensive football and get enough snaps that J.P. Mason and maybe even Isaac Grindo get on the field and contribute a little. But, to me, that it's twofold, right? You're able to run the ball. You're controlling the clock. You're keeping Josh Allen off the field. Those are all the things that the 49ers have to do. They have to pick up a turnover somewhere. They can't give the ball away at all on offense. They have to button up special teams. And if they can do all that, then they head into the fourth quarter with a chance.
There may be no one thing that unites 49er fans more, and maybe not in history, than everybody right now saying, Matt, we just want more Mason and Garendo. I think that's the only thing 49er fans can agree on in unison at all times.
Which is absolutely hilarious, because they're talking about in the same. They're saying, who needs the freaking offensive player of the year out there? Right. We want Jordan Mason. It is like the
less of that
thing
guy
I think I've ever. Yeah, less of the guy who a year ago we were all hailing as like who's the most valuable player on the 49ers? Is it Christian McCaffrey? Is it Brock Purdy? Yeah. And now here we are, like, get that guy off the field. I want to see more J.P. Mason.
who, by the way, I'm like, how quickly they forget Elijah Mitchell, who would be the number 2, right? He was supposed to be the guy, if not for the injury that's keeping him out. Matt Maiocco, our 49ers insider, is live with us from Buffalo, where the Niners are taking on the Bills. 5:20 kickoff for you tonight. We'll have it for you right here on KNBR. We were talking about Fred Warner. How alarming was that news with Fred Warner this week that he's been playing with a fracture in his ankle?
Yeah, it's interesting, because that's usually the tidbit you get on the day that players are cleaning out their lockers.
Like end of the season?
Yeah, those are the nuggets that you usually get, like, hey, Fred, how's your off season? What are you going to be doing? And, he would throw out there, just using Fred as an example, that's when you hear like, well, I got to going to have surgery next week. My fractured ankle that I've been playing with since week 4. And we all like, oh, okay, well, that explains why, so-and-so wasn't as effective after that injury. But for Fred, I mean, he revealed it. I mean, he was asked specifically about his ankle, and he didn't hold back. I mean, he said exactly what's going on, and I applaud him as a journalist. I love it when people are truthful and honest, and so I thought it was great. I think that people should know what the limitations are or what a player's going through. So, there's probably old school guys. Oh, he's making an excuse. Well, it's a damn good one. Playing with a broken ankle is a darn good excuse. The best one I've ever heard.
Yeah, right.
Matt, as you look at Buffalo, do you see them attempting to attack the 49ers similarly to other teams? We really were all over Green Bay looking to run it on the Niners. They got Josh Jacobs going, really just dominated the game from the jump, running the football. Do you think Buffalo will look at what other teams have done to the Niners and look to do the same? And the one thing every week that continues to be an issue for this team is inability to stop the run. Even when the numbers are okay, it feels like there are certain drives where teams can run it on them and kind of take control of the game. Last week was just an all systems fail. Where do you see that part of this matchup between these two teams?
Yeah, I think they'll feel it out. I think they'll see what's working, and certainly the Packers did last week. And it's funny you say that because at the end of the game, you look at the stats, and the Packers only averaged 4 yards per carry, which, that's not a horrendous number for a run defense. In fact, that's
been a few games like that where the numbers at the end are not as bad as it looks in game.
Right. And the difference was that, it took them 42 carries. And so if a team's able to run the ball 42 times, it means that the defense is failing to get off the field and failing in a lot of important downs and also failing to stop the run because you can't run the ball 42 times. It's impossible to run the ball 42 times in a regulation NFL game unless you're having a lot of success running the ball too. So, I think that the Bills are a diverse enough offense that, they can look at a number of different things. Deommodore Lenoir's not out there. Who's going to play nickelback? Probably Renardo Green. Nick McLeod has been promoted to the 53-man. So, if Renardo Green can't go, then maybe it is Nick McLeod out there. Charvarius Ward is coming back. And, we all know the NFL. I mean, no one's feeling sorry for anybody as far as, we all feel horrible for Charvarius Ward, but if the Bills see a mismatch there, or maybe they can exploit, a player who hasn't played in more than a month, then they will do that. So I think that probably the Bills go in there with a guy at quarterback who is, I believe, the leading candidate right now as far as the betting line for NFL MVP. So I think that they go in feeling that, basically anything that they dial up, they can have success against the 49ers with.
At least the Niners are good against running quarterbacks. Matt Maiocco, the voice here with us on the UMA guest line. Matt, enjoy Orchard Park and Buffalo, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
See you, man. Adam
Thanks,
Copeland,
Matty.
John Dickinson with you. Matt Maiocco, our 49ers insider, NBC Sports Bay Area. Make sure you're reading him, following him, and listening to him and Jennifer Lee Chan with the 49ers Talk Podcast, a top 10 football podcast in the country. You can hear it on wherever you get your podcasts, and they record one after every game, so you'll get that tonight. JD is live from Buffalo, where the Niners are getting ready to take on the Bills. And JD, somebody on the YouTube chat was checking in about the weather, saying that he'd heard that they'd removed 20-something inches or something, tons of snow from the field. But you were saying the field was tarped, and it looks pretty good right now, right?
Yeah, the field was tarped, and they were blowing some of the snow off the tarp when I got here, I guess about 2 hours ago it was now. But no, looking at the tarp is completely off the field right now. There are some spots where it looks icy, I think is probably the best way to look at it.
Can we show the kid? Can you turn? Are you in an area where you can turn your camera around?
Let me.
If I keep it here right here, if you're watching on the YouTube chat or on KNBR.com, the app, twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
Let me do that. Let me
somebody
do that right
asked,
now.
can JD show us the field? And I was like, maybe he can.
We're going to pick up the laptop right now. We're going to raise it, and then I'm going to just turn it right here.
JD's live from Buffalo in Orchard Park. Look at that. Little look at the booth.
And then,
what are you, Mike Holler, giving us a tour of the booth on Buffalo?
We'll raise it up there, and so there you go.
There you go. So there is a little bit of snow you can see on the field. Some of it's been blown off. It looks icy, like you said,
Yeah, it's icy in some of the corners there, and in the end zone. It looks a little bit icy. We'll turn it back around here and sit back down. But no, they were blowing the snow off and shoveling it off the tarp when I got here, and they're taking some tractors and some snow plows out to kind of scrape the ice.
Maybe a Zamboni, something like that.
Yeah, they're scraping the ice. Well, it's a John Deere.
Now, dude, you're gonna go like John Miller with a rain delay on us. Where there's a rain delay. John Miller will start bringing it, and they've turned the lights on here at Great American Ballpark.
Yeah.
You can tell they've got a wattage that is a bit higher than the wattage we'd use back at Oracle Park on the shores of McCovey Cove, 2nd and King Street in downtown San Francisco. Well, I'll tell you this: it's a balmy 63 here in San Francisco.
Wow. Well, it's a balmy 28 here in Orchard Park.
Oh.
Honestly, I'm dead serious. It felt like it honestly felt colder in downtown Buffalo to me. And it was, I don't know, 35, 38, but no snow. I don't know. You get in these snow pockets, and I thought maybe I'm dressed a little bit warmer.
Well, bro,
but yeah, the fans, man, they're going to be dealing with it. I know they stand here anyway. But, 27 right now feels like 17.
Well,
Mike Baird.
Mike Baird said it feels like 17. Nice. I can hear him in the background.
Well, no, he actually brought up the app. It's 27, but it feels like 17. I don't know. I kind of call me crazy, but it was 27, and for me it felt like 37. So.
Well, maybe hit the parking lot and jump through a flaming table, and that'll warm you up with the Bills Mafia. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson.
Plenty of time for that between 7:20 and 8:20.
Plenty of time. JD is live from Orchard Park where the Niners are taking on the Buffalo Bills. A 5:20 kickoff. We'll have it for you right here on the Sports Leader. We'll hand it over to Greg Papa and Tim Ryan about an hour before kick, and they'll take you up to and through kickoff. When we come on back here, we will get you the game plan as built and told to you by 49ers General Manager and President of Football, John Lynch, who joins Murph and Marcus every week throughout the season. Niners and the Bills. We'll hear from John Lynch next on the Sports Leader.
It sound right, boy.
Week 13 is upon us. Niners and the Buffalo Bills Sunday Night Football kickoff at 5:20. We'll have it all for you right here on the Sports Leader. Tim Ryan and Greg Papa on the call tonight. They'll take you up to and through kickoff. We'll hand it over to them about 4:20 this evening to take you up until kick. We should get you Building the Game Plan, sponsored by Golden State. When you succeed, we succeed. Visit us today at goldenstatelumber.com and by River Islands. Come home to River Islands in Lathrop and discover the San Joaquin River lifestyle with its lakes, parks, and schools. Start your tour today at riverislands.com. It was for me. So shout out Danny Dunn, too. He just shot me a text that said, it was for me. John Lynch, the 49ers president of football operations and general manager and Hall of Famer, joins Murph and Marcus, the KNBR Morning Show, every week throughout the Niners season. They joined this week. And, Tim, how does this one start off? I don't know if I got the open for it. What did they ask about? They asked about the tough week. Oh, boy, why wouldn't they? Niners and the Packers last week, just 10 points scored. They got blown out 38-10. They started the conversation with John Lynch asking how they feeling after that tough week.
Doing okay. Kind of licking our wounds. And, the cool thing about this league, as long as I've been around it, more so than the NBA or baseball where you kind of play the next night or the next couple nights, we have to wait a little bit, but we do get an opportunity to get right back. And so I think the key thing is not turning a blind eye to what happened. We came in yesterday, players did, and took a good hard look at it. You try to learn from it. Then you try to file it away, and in fact, you have to. It's a requirement to file it away because you got someone, and this week in particular, a very good team like Buffalo at their place, and so that's a tough challenge. And so you have to use it as fuel, but you got to move forward, and that's a big part of success in this league.
Yeah, John, just kind of setting the tone. You kind of answered my first question, which was going to be kind of what's the mood? How would you describe the mood? Because you talk about turning the page. You also talk about a daunting task. And you also talk about not performing the way you wanted to on Sunday. So we talked to you on Friday, and you guys were kind of grumpy and ready to wash out the taste of Seattle. So how would you describe the mood today?
Well, I think we were embarrassed with the way that went the other day. That's not who we are. We've won a lot of football games, and we've been one of the better football teams in football over the past couple years. And so, that's an expectation from throughout the league, but it's also an expectation, most importantly, within our locker room. And, I think a lot of reasons. I think, why things might have transpired a certain way if you allow them to creep in, but you can't. We had everything we needed out there, and we just, it comes down to the fundamentals of football. We didn't tackle well enough on defense, albeit against a very good running back in Josh Jacobs, and a really good scheme in terms of running the ball. We knew that would be a challenge. We weren't up to that task, and the same thing, careless penalties throughout the game. You go play a team like that sloppy when they're motivated because we're the team that knocked them out last year, and we're a little compromised in terms of guys we have ready. It's not going to be a good outcome, and we were very disappointed with the way we didn't show up, and you got to do something about that in this league. That's what I know is. It's one thing to be disappointed. What are you going to do about it? And the only thing we can do is go back to work and have a really good practice week.
Fred Warner also described the defense's performance as embarrassing this past week, and especially in the first half against Josh Jacobs, ripping off all those broken tackles. John, you've been on the field before. Is there any explanation for the lack of tackles, or is it all just fundamentals, or even maybe it's just some credit to Josh Jacobs and the style of run that he has?
He's a really good back, I'll tell you that. He runs hard. But when you're playing a back like that, you have to do it collectively. There's going to be some missed tackles against a guy like that. And, it's strength in numbers. You got to come at them with multiple people, and I felt like they did a good job blocking us up, but we didn't get to the ball with numbers as much as we needed to. And then at some point it's mano a mano. You got to make the play, and you got to take the challenge. And there's technique things involved. We pride ourselves on being a good tackling team. We were not the other night. That was clear, and we have to fix that.
Okay, so yeah, the tackles, obviously, kind of we could all see it with our eyes. We switch over to the other side of the ball and ask you about Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, you're a Stanford guy, and you said you were ready for him to break out Sunday. I think we all were, and it didn't happen again. Is it still a ramp-up process for him? Is it time for him to say, like, yeah, it's going to take a while before he gets back to being who he is? He's not there yet?
I don't believe so. I think it's more probably a byproduct. You think about the last couple games, and possessions haven't been plentiful. I think at one point during that game the other night, I never felt a game like that. I believe they had 30-plus plays, and we were down at like 6 or 7. And so that's not a good equation for getting anyone going offensively. The other thing you have to do, you have to stay out there. You have to earn the right to have those type of deals where you get multiple plays. And, we talk about rotations beyond Christian. Well, those things all go, how long can you stay out there? How can you convert on third down? Can you not even get to third down because you're converting on first and second? We haven't been doing that. Conversely, they were controlling the ball on offense. And so it just wasn't a good equation. I do, my eyes tell me a lot. We all know who Christian is as a player. My eyes tell me, that he's in a good spot physically, and I think it's just a matter of time before we get him going. But it takes more than just Christian. It takes the entire unit being in sync, and that's what we have to strive for this weekend.
Yeah, and Christian did not have the luxury of running behind Trent Williams this past weekend after he was scratched from the lineup on Sunday morning. So, John, what was your evaluation of the offensive line without Trent Williams this past weekend?
I was proud of Jalen Moore. I thought Jalen Moore played a good game, and it's always hard to be a backup player coming in, but to replace Trent Williams is extra hard because the standard's so very high. Other than that, I think we could play better throughout the line. We're going to need to play better.
Yeah, for sure. It was a tough one all around the board, and you guys are going to Buffalo where things will be tough for sure. We continue to ask sort of the tough ones about the guys who aren't playing great. Deebo Samuel didn't have a great game, and he had the one kick return, which was great. And what was interesting, John, is I'm kind of like had a little moment yesterday, and I queued up that Netflix Receiver, and it was the episode where you guys went to Philly a year ago and beat them 42-19. Deebo had 3 touchdowns. He looked electric in that game. That was just 1 year ago, just shy of 1 year ago. He looks a little different now. I know you guys don't fully disclose injuries and everything. Maybe he's a little banged up, but would you comment maybe on fans who are saying, wow, I don't see Deebo as electric and as, say, I don't know, productive as he was maybe a year ago? What's the Niners' answer to that?
I think Deebo has made so many plays for us over such a long period of time here and been such a reason for our success that people have become accustomed to that. And the explosives haven't been there as much. You mentioned the kick return. Mm-hmm. You think about that play in the game, and that's what the NFL is all about. Those type of plays, and we finally won a coin toss. We hadn't won a coin toss, I think, since New England game. Mm-hmm. We deferred, and deferring gives you the opportunity to get the ball first out of halftime. Well, sure enough, it happens. We get down to I believe the 9-yard line, and we're going in. Then if we can score a touchdown, it's 17-14, and instead they call a hold that I still can't find on film. I think it was a perfect block by Eric Saubert. I think it was fundamental teach tape 101, and yet there were 2 flags on the ground. So, I'll leave it at that. But that was disappointing. But that looked like the Deebo that we need, that we expect, and hopefully there's more of that coming.
A few more things to talk about with John here. I guess the probably the best news from yesterday was Dre Greenlaw. Apparently the practice window will be open. John, what can you tell us about that? How realistic is it that he actually gets into a game at some point in the 2024 season?
Oh, I think that's the expectation. I think that's very realistic. When that happens, the way the league rules work, Dre was on the physically unable to perform list, but he counts under the IR where you have a 3-week window. So once we open it up, within the next 3 weeks, 21 days, he's got to come back. We got to activate him. And so it's going to be really cool to see 57 out there on that field. It will be even better when we get him back in game action. That would be foolish, though, to have a guy be out this long, stick him out for his first practice. We try to simulate as much with the trainers. They do a great job, but now it's a next step of his rehab process, getting into practice, which I'm really proud of Dre with the way he's attacked this. He's a difference maker for us on the field, but we're inspired just by watching him out here. So, hats off to the kid for working his tail off, and I love Dre Greenlaw and what he's brought to the Niners, and I'm really proud and excited for him that he's taking this next step.
Like, I'm blown, like Achilles. You and I are old enough to remember that was it. It was over when you tore your Achilles. You're talking about this guy. This was February. This is now November, say December, 10 months. Now I'm looking at like Cam Akers is a guy. Terrell Suggs is a guy. Are we here to say like this thing has changed? The Achilles injury has changed. It's no longer a career ender. And moreover, you can come back within 12 months?
Yeah, it's not what it used to be. When I lived in Denver, my next door neighbor was Chauncey Billups, at one point, the NBA player. And Chauncey had an Achilles, and Chauncey was well into his 30s when that happened. And his comeback, I believe it was like 7-8 months. And it just blew my mind. And talking to him, and I think like everything, it's them getting more aggressive with the rehab earlier in the process and the way they attack it. And, Dre, I think a lot of people would come and look at him, a month ago and say, that guy's ready to play because he's such a gifted athlete. But you have markers you have to hit. I think football's a different beast, with the contact and the explosion. And a guy like Dre is as explosive as he is, making sure that your entire body's right. But he really has attacked this with the intensity that he does everything in his life. And so really happy for Dre, and it obviously will be a great thing if we can get him back on that field.
John, it's been no secret that you guys have dealt with plenty of injuries on both sides of the ball this year, but the note that really hit home with me this weekend was seeing that the only starters in this game on the defense side of the ball were Fred Warner and Deommodore Lenoir from last year's playoff matchup against the Green Bay Packers. So let's talk about the overall depth of your defense, specifically on that defensive line that was out there without Bosa, without Hargrave, their performance without those two guys, and overall the depth on the defensive line.
We got to be better in terms of their performance the other night. I think everybody, can attest to that. There's turnover on teams, and when the way we're set up and we've paid a lot of our star players, there's going to be turnover. I was happy with what we did with our defensive line this offseason. I thought we added some stability. I think a guy like Leonard Floyd is really starting to show who he is as a football player. Proud of guys like Jordan Elliott. We just got to stay, we got to get healthy, and then we got to keep people healthy. And I think we'll play our best ball down the run, down the close of this season here.
It's funny. We have Leonard Floyd as our player of the week this week. He joins us at 9:30. You just mentioned him. He had to have 2 sacks on Sunday. Could you expand a little bit on, when you guys recruited him and signing him and what it's been like having him in the building?
Well, he's a guy we liked from the very beginning. When we first got here, he was a rookie from Georgia. The Bears drafted him, and we liked Leonard a lot then. And there's a toughness to his game. He became a division rival with the Rams. He went off to Buffalo, but there's always just a productivity to his game and a toughness. And then it's always interesting. You watch players from afar, you compete against them, but when you get to know them as part of your team, man, this dude's old school tough. He really is. He's played for quite a few years now, but he doesn't want vet days. He doesn't want off days. This guy wants to go to work, and I really respect and admire his approach to the game. He's not the rah-rah guy giving speeches, but you just watch his actions, and it's really inspiring. So we're happy to have Leonard Floyd. He had a big game in terms of sacking the quarterback the other night, but I think he's a complete football player, plays the run, plays the pass, and we're happy to have him.
Yeah, and I'll have a bit of a homecoming this week going back to Buffalo for your guys' Sunday night matchup. And, John, that's actually my last question is about that Sunday night matchup. Josh Allen, the California kid at quarterback. Would love your breakdown of Josh Allen going back to the 2018 draft, how you guys thought of him then, and what do you think about him now ahead of this matchup this Sunday?
Yeah, he's a stud. I mean, he is a big boy. Remember watching him at Wyoming, and God, he's just such a physical specimen. It looks like a D lineman frame when he's out there. He plays the game with I think a great love. It kind of reminds me of Brett Favre, the way he plays, in terms of his love for the game, his physicality, and I'm sure their coaches are cringing half the time. They know he can take care of himself, but he likes running through people, and he has the ability to do it. I think the greatest testament to him is that the receivers and all that keep changing, but they just keep humming along. And so he's one of those guys in this league. We liked him coming out, and he's one of the best in our game. So very much a leader of that team, a tough task. Got a lot of respect for their organization. Brandon Beane, their general manager, Sean McDermott, the head coach. They're always going to be there, Buffalo. They're very consistent. They've got a plan, and they're just a very, very consistent organization. And we got our work cut out for us, but we're looking forward to that challenge.
Yeah, by the way, just in that first round, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, and Lamar Jackson were the 5 taken. The only 2 still with their teams are Lamar and Josh Allen. Says something. And by the way, Lamar went 32. Sean, I mean, how do you guys have Lamar? I'm watching him. Every time you watch him, but I was just watching him last night because I had some time. My God, what a gifted, what an athlete, what a player, what a leader, right?
Yeah, he's a tremendous player. I saw something this morning where he's leading the league in passing right now. And who would have thought that coming out of college, that Lamar would lead the league in passing with what he can do with his legs. He's an MVP guy and fantastic player, fantastic competitor. I really, unless we're playing him, I just love watching that kid play the game because he looks like he has so much fun doing it.
He makes John Harbaugh a better coach, I'll tell you that, man, for sure. We always appreciate it, John. You're always a great conversation. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
There he is, John Lynch on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
there's not much secret to it. We got to tackle better. We can't turn it over 3 times on 3 drives in a row. The penalties that we can change, a couple pre-snap penalties, 112 on the field, 1 bad holding that we had. Those are the ones that we got to fix.
49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan on the 38-10 loss to the Packers last week, and we've been talking about a pathway to victory today for the 49ers. That's one place you can start to clean stuff up. You cannot create self-inflicted damage to yourself, or you're not going to be the team in the Bills. At Buffalo, especially without some of your top talent. JD is live from Buffalo, and I believe we made the connection, have we? Joined by our guy Larry Krueger. Hear him on the Krueger Show, Niners Nightly, weeknights, 6 to 7. What's up, Krueger? How are you, bro? Hey, good, man. How are you? How's your Thanksgiving? I like last year when they beat the Seahawks on Thanksgiving. This time I was left wanting. I feel like after Thanksgiving dinner this time.
Man, chomping on that bird on the field.
Yeah,
on
right.
50th.
George Kittle left with the whole thing. Remember that? He's like, I'm taking this. I've been waiting to do this for years. He took the whole turkey back to the locker room to share with the guys. So how are we feeling after last week's loss? I mean, Brock Purdy's going to play in this one, at least to start. And I was saying to JD, I would assume that since he's playing, even if there are limitations, they're not things that Kyle or the team is expecting are going to keep him from helping them do what they need to do offensively to win.
Well, I mean, I just think that at this point in the year, you kind of are who you are. You typically do what you do, but not always, right? So, like, the numbers say that these teams are one kind of team, but they may not play to that personality tonight. So, to me, I mean, the 49ers have to run the ball a lot to win this game. I mean, Brock Purdy gives them a chance because I think, you're not going to win on the backup quarterback on the road against the Buffalo Bills. Some people say you're not going to win with Brock Purdy either, but you have a chance with Brock Purdy if you can run the ball and maybe get a turnover. And yet, Buffalo has been the better red zone team. Buffalo has been the better turnover team. Buffalo is the team that's more likely to have success running the ball. So we'll see tonight. That's what the Niners need to do. They need to run the ball, win the time of possession, preserve their defense a little bit, and win the turnover.
As you look at the ability to run the ball, I wait for it every week, Larry, your weekly question to Kyle Shanahan about getting the other running backs involved more. How did that go this week, and what do you think is the key with the backups at left tackle and left guard, with Ben Barch getting the start at left guard for Aaron Banks? How do you run the ball effectively if you're the 49ers?
Well, I mean, first I think you've got to use all your personnel. I mean, you've got Mason averaging 5 yards a carry. You have Brendo averaging 6 yards a carry. Yeah, there haven't been a lot of plays. They haven't been able to have the kind of continuity that they want to have. But you've got to make sure that you get the ball in those guys' hands. I mean, the reality of the Niners situation is that they haven't been able to get the ball in the hands of Brendo or Mason since McCaffrey has been back. Mason has 6 carries in the last 3 weeks. Brendo's got 1. You can't have 2 really explosive backs going for over 5 yards a carry and just forget about them. And that seemingly is what's happened. So they need a huge running game tonight, and I don't think McCaffrey can shoulder the whole load. I'd love to see a 40-carry, pounded out, run the ball kind of a performance, and I think it's possible. Buffalo gives up 4.9 a carry. It's 3rd worst in the league. They gave up 271 yards to the Ravens and Derrick Henry earlier in the year. If you can commit to the run, you might be able to run that.
Larry Krueger joins us ahead of the Niners and the Bills. 5:20 kickoff. We'll have it for you right here on KNBR. In terms of the other guys they're missing today, now Mooney Ward back, but they're going to be without Demo Lenore. No Nick Bosa. We'll talk about that in a minute. And they're missing some offensive line in Trent Williams and Aaron Banks. In terms of the secondary today, that's kind of where my focus is with how well Josh Allen passes the ball, how much they pass the ball. They've thrown it a whole bunch of times this year, and he runs it also. 12 carries was the most of the season for him last week against Kansas City. How concerned are you with the Niners secondary today against this pass attack?
Well, JD, what's Bernardo's status? I know he was.
Yeah, still questionable. Yeah, questionable officially, and we'll see.
To me, he is the. I know he's a rookie and everything. You don't want to put too much pressure on a rookie, but if you don't have Lenore, okay, but you have Green, and if you don't have Lenore or Green, that's going to be.
What did you think of Renardo's game last week, Larry? Green Bay picked on him a little bit.
smart things. They moved him around a little bit, and he got real aggressive at the line of scrimmage on a couple plays. So, but I mean, I'll take my chances with Bernardo Green if he's healthy. The guy that I'm worried about in this game is Khalil Shakir out of the slot. The Niners are struggling to defend the slot receiver, and that's with Lenore. So without Lenore, I think Khalil Shakir could be a problem.
Larry, as you look at the Niners' inability to stop the run, you look up, and I'm kind of asking everybody this, at the end of the game, the overall numbers don't look terrible, but Green Bay controlled the game, running it. Teams that even have had lesser success statistically than the Niners have against the Niners have controlled the game, running it. Do you think Buffalo's going to really look to attack the 49ers and make them stop the run as everybody else has? And how do the Niners combat it now with Fred Warner playing on a fractured ankle, and Elliott's out now on the interior, which has been a problem all year long? Can the Niners prevent another opponent from just controlling the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, I mean, that's the ultimate question. I mean, can this defense bow up without this week, now without Jordan Elliott out with the concussion? And the real issue is that the defense has been totally unable to force turnovers. They've only forced one turnover in the past 3 games. So, this is going to be a huge challenge. I mean, the one thing is James Cook, I think, is a better receiver than a runner. He runs upright. He's not the most powerful runner. He's quick, but he's not a burner by any stretch. And he does expose his body. If you can get some licks on him, I think he'll run tentatively. I'm a little bit more concerned about the backup running back all day, Ray Davis, who's a San Francisco native and played at Kentucky. He's a rookie, but he runs with tremendous power and body lean. And I can see Davis coming off the bench and having a huge performance too. So to me, Ray Davis is going to be a problem. Amari Cooper, they're trying to get him going. Khalil Shakir in the slot, and then Josh Allen is a big part of their rush attack, especially in the red zone. If you look at these two teams, I mean, if you look at the Niners and the Bills, and you go, wow, the Niners are the 4th rated offense, 6th rated defense, and the Bills are the 13th rated offense, 15th rated defense, and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
Teams yet. But then when you look at points, the Niners are 13th in points scored, 20th in points allowed. Bills are 3rd in points scored, 7th in points allowed. It's all about points, and they just do it in the red zone. And Allen is a big part of that.
I mean, they've
And it's all about those.
Yeah.
It's all about those 3 division games that the Niners have lost. I mean, if they win those games, maybe they're not an impressive 8-3, but they're 8-3, and they're going up against a 9-2 Buffalo team. And this is the showdown that the schedule makers expected it to be when they released it back in May.
The last 5 games for them, Larry, in terms of points: 30, 30, 30, 31, 34. Niners 17-10 in their last 2 games. It doesn't feel like, and they haven't been a team all year that looks like they can win in a shootout. I mean, is it going to take 30-plus to win this one?
Well, it's going to. I'll say this: it's going to take a whole lot better performance from the offense than they.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers last week had 11 first downs. 11. That's the fewest in any game under Kyle Shanahan since he's been here in San Francisco. So, I'm sure Shanahan is looking for the big bounce back performance offensively. To me, it comes down to what can the Niners do in the red zone. And I'd love to see them feature Kittle, who's one of the best in the biz, Jennings and Pearsall in the red zone. But it would be great if they could get some chunk yardage plays. And to me, putting Correndo on the field somehow, some way, makes a lot of sense.
And just to keep everybody updated on what's going on here at Orchard Park at Highmark Stadium, that the snow has started to fall again here as they've taken the tarp off and cleared the field, and players are starting to come out a little bit here shortly for the early warm-up. And, the field is getting lightly dusted as we speak. Do you feel, Larry, that levels the playing field at all if this game is played in just a light dusting, or do you feel like the Niners, would have trouble with that based on the fact that, Josh Allen can make so many plays with his legs and off schedule? Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It looks like right now it's about 8 miles an hour. And I was actually during the last, when we were playing the John Lynch interview, I walked down a little bit close to the field, and it didn't seem as windy as I would have anticipated. And now I look it up right now. It says 8 miles an hour. So we'll see if that changes. It does look like high atop the stadium that the flags are really whipping around, but down closer to the field, it didn't seem like maybe it was whipping around quite as much. And the goalposts are not whipping nearly as much as I look at it as the flags up top as the snow continues to fall here. But 8 miles an hour currently as I look at it. Sure.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you, talking to Larry Krueger. JD is out in Buffalo getting ready for the Niners and the Bills' 5:20 kick. It's everybody's favorite time now for JD and Larry to botch their player to bank on, which is, of course, sponsored by Casino Matrix. Just drop in for gaming, dining, sports. Please gamble responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER. We'll give JD the first pick this week. JD, who are you banking on?
I'm banking on Brock Purdy to play big and to hang on to the football in the elements and make some big plays with his arm, make a few big plays with his legs that help to keep the 49ers in the game. So I'm leaving the running backs for you, Larry. I'm going to take Brock Purdy. Shocker.
Secret menu for Krug. What you going with?
Wow. That's not even off another menu. That's like off of a completely different restaurant.
Like we don't have that. We don't have Nick McLeod here, sir. That's not on our menu.
We're gonna have to fly that in. We're gonna have to fly that in from overseas.
And you don't want to eat Nick McLeod that's flown into the mainland like by a landlocked state. You know what I mean, Larry? You get. As much as I want to go Ben Barch for the Ben Barch game today, I'm going to stay away from Ben Barch. And Ben Barch, the big inactive. We call him the big inactive, but he's been active last week.
Starting to left guard, brother. Starting to left guard.
Yeah, now he's starting this week, so that's our guy.
Ben Barch is a guy who is a great story. This guy was like 100 pounds less. You know, this concoction, like Gatorade, peanut butter, and raw eggs, and all this stuff. It's this crazy concoction. And he put on like 100 pounds. He's a great guy to talk to. I talk to him all the time, but he doesn't play, so I don't hear those interviews. So we're I'm excited that he's going to play. Actually, Forrester feels this guy's a really good fit for what they do. He can play center or guard. Obviously, he's going to step in at left guard tonight. This is a player that they've had their eye on for a while. They've been building him up. So
yeah, I'm going to just go with the run game. I'll go with Christian McCaffrey and whoever else they can get back there, because Buffalo, if you're going to get an edge on them, you talk about time of possession, controlling the clock, sort of deflating what they can do offensively. It's all going to start with the run, and we are still waiting to see McCaffrey reach any kind of level that he was at last year. The stat that was out there last week, Larry, from Next Gen Stats, is that McCaffrey has yet to reach a top speed in a game this year of his lowest top, that reaches the lowest top speed of any game he played in last season. So he certainly is at least not getting into the open space. But we've seen that in the last couple of weeks. The O-line has been tough, and they've not been able to run the ball.
Well, and this is like kind of the catch-22 weird topic of the week where, Shane saying, hey, it's unfair for people who criticize him. He's not back to his old status. He's only been back for, but Kyle, you're the one who's playing him at all.
Yeah, right.
You're the one, not us. We're not the ones who are forgetting Correndo and Mason even exist. That these guys, they have two backs who are explosive and powerful and are going for over 5 yards a carry. I have not forgotten that, Kyle. You have. So that's
where we stand. Yeah. Adam Copeland, JD with you. Larry Krueger, you can hear him on and see him on Niners Nightly, weeknight 6 to 7 right here on KNBR. And, of course, on the Krug Show. Larry, we'll talk to you in the postgame. Good stuff there. Adam Copeland, JD, who is live from Orchard Park, where the Niners are getting ready to take on the Bills, a 5:20 kickoff. We'll get you some scores from around the league coming up in just a little bit as well. We'll whip around the NFL. Not a ton of games today because we got a couple of Thursday games. We had a Friday game. How about that? A Black Friday game. And then we got today's slate as well. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson, Niners and the Bills, 5:20 kick, only here on the Sports Leader.
I think it starts with Josh Allen. I think he continues to get better. He's all the, what he's always been, effective in being able to run and scramble and find guys. The difference, I think, with him this year, he's just being more effective. He's grown as far as being able to throw on time. If you give him something, he has the arm to be able to rip it, wherever that, given throw is. But he's really good at moving guys, in zones and, being pinpoint accurate with it, but how fast and how he can accelerate the throws. And then, with him, it's his size and his speed, the ability to throw it on the run, especially down the field. A lot of guys don't have that vision downfield. I feel like he sees that really, really well, and he can throw it really, really well. And he can find a gap that he needs to escape, but then also still stay alive. And in certain situations, he can run you over or he can slide. So you have to be ready for both and be able to react to both.
As the voice of 49ers defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen talking about facing Josh Allen, the leading MVP candidate in the NFL as the Niners enter play against the Buffalo Bills tonight, 5:20 kickoff right here on the Sports Leader. JD, we've seen what's happened the last couple of days. There have been already a handful of head coaches fired. Eberflus and the Bears with a disaster end of the game on Thursday resulted in his firing on Friday. By the way, after he'd done some media saying he thought they could move past this, like they let him do his Friday morning media hits before they decided to axe him. But in terms of coordinator stuff, we've seen teams move on from offensive coordinators and D coordinators already this year. How much pressure is on Sorensen, not just today, but for the remainder of the season?
I think a lot between now and the end of the year as to how the team finishes overall and how the defense finishes between now and the end of the year, because I think there are going to be some other coordinator options that are going to be available should the 49ers want to go in that direction again. And, they went the unique route with Nick Sorensen being the defensive coordinator, and then, they also bring in Brandon Staley as well to be the advisor and the, some would say that the pseudo defensive coordinator, in the background, not having to do the press conferences. So the players really like Nick Sorensen. I think things got out of whack last year with Steve Wilkes and some of his game plans and maybe blitzing too much and doing things a little too differently than what had been successful for the 49ers in years prior to that. They've tried to get back to basics this year to varying degrees of success. I mean, there have been pretty significant stretches in a lot of these games where the 49ers defense has been pretty good, but they've also faltered down the stretch in some of these games, and they've been much more vulnerable to being dominated for individual stretches of games than they have in the past. And I think part of that, too, is this is just an under-talented team by comparison at all three levels. A lot of youth in the secondary. We talk every week about not having Dre Greenlaw for the entire part of this season, and now Fred Warner's been playing on the fractured ankle since the end of September. And then up front, they just have not had the horses up front on the interior, and that was before losing Javon Hargrave and now Elliott, who's going to be out today. So I think they aren't as talented defensively. It's been kind of a mixed bag defensively, but all of that being said, I think if this thing kind of falls apart here over the last 6 games, I think Sorensen could be in some trouble.
Time now for What's on Deck, sponsored by TimberTech Decking and Railing. Everything wood should be. Visit TimberTech.com. We like to make our deckspectations or our declarations. I'll get to the declaration in just a minute, but our deckspectations for today, a lot of passing from the Buffalo Bills. You just heard Larry say, too, that they like, you mentioned that James Cook, better pass catcher out of the backfield. However, he's their leading rusher, just shy of 600 yards at 4.3 a carry. After what we saw from Josh Jacobs last week against the Niners, I would expect more teams to try to exploit the weak run defense, especially knowing that you can do some play action and run it pretty effectively without Nick Bosa out there. Again, he's not there to set an edge. You talked about the interior defensive line, but you're also missing exterior now. You didn't really have anybody opposite Bosa, and now he's not out there for the second straight game. My expectation is that we're going to see more run today from Buffalo than maybe previously expected, but I'd say especially early in the game, you're going to see a lot of run.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. My expectation is the 49ers get a couple of turnovers.
Yeah, that's kind of where
they're going to get two. Yeah, I think they're going to get a couple of turnovers in this game. I think Buffalo, coming off the bye, I think they're a little rusty early in this one, and it allows the 49ers an opportunity, a pathway to hanging in the game and maybe having it be a one-score game come the fourth quarter. Now, you're still going to have to stop Josh Allen from making big plays down the stretch, and you're still going to have to finish, which has been its own problem for the Niners in games where they've played well. But I don't know. I kind of feel like the Bills maybe put it on the turf a little bit early, and it allows this game to be closer than many are anticipating.
Yeah, if I was going to go with a declaration for our What's on Deck here, I would say the same thing. Like, if I was going to go declaration, and JD, I asked you, if the Niners win this game and we look back, what will have happened? That was what I was looking at as the turnover battle. That would mean that they probably turned over Josh Allen again. First 7 games of the year, didn't turn over anything. He's had 5 in his last 4 games now. So I'd say winning the turnover battle. I would also say the Niners had to play a pretty clean game themselves. They win all the damn time when Brock Purdy doesn't turn it over. You mentioned snow's starting to fall there now. The elements could be a problem for him when moisture's involved. We know he hasn't played at his best. But if they do an effective job of stopping the run, I'd say that probably means they ran more offensive plays than Buffalo, and they held Buffalo under 30, and they won the turnover battle, which are 3 things that have just not happened a whole lot against Buffalo, especially at Orchard Park this year.
Yeah, and Buffalo is vulnerable to the run defense. The run defense can be suspect, and so the Niners are going to hit them with it. And look, I've been reluctant to say that the Niners need to balance it out in terms of the carries, but I think they need to balance it out a little bit more in terms of the carries. Run McCaffrey, throw it to McCaffrey, but get Mason in the game. The key, though, is if you're going to get Mason in the game, I'm more Mason than Garendo. I don't think there is necessarily enough touches for all 3, but I do think you can pepper Mason in, but Mason's got to hang on to the rock. I still have a sneaking suspicion that Mason having a propensity to fumble may be where the lack of trust lies in terms of Kyle Shanahan. But hell, McCaffrey coughed one up last week in Green Bay in the second half there. But to me, running the ball and sticking with it early and mixing it up in terms of getting Mason more involved, as reluctant as I've been to say it this year, I'm always, hey, McCaffrey's better than all the rest of those guys. You're going to need a couple of running backs have big games. 6
carries for Mason since McCaffrey's come back, and 1 for Garendo. I believe Garendo's was like 1 for 0 yards, and Mason's still going like over 5 yards a carry in those 6 carries that he's had since McCaffrey came back. He had one big one last week, the longest run of the day for the Niners. So we'll see what happens today and if any of those guys are utilized in a game that could be a snowy game. Real quick, what's the weather looking like? Is the snow still falling?
Yeah, light. It's lightened a little bit. They've got the plow out on the field, and they're clearing it, but there's a light dusting of snow all over the field, and they're just now sending the John Deere sweeper through with the plow to clear the middle of the field first, and then toward the sidelines there. But light dusting. I don't think it's supposed to be heavy throughout the game at all. Maybe a little light dusting here or there. But, the players are out warming out, and some Niners guys coming up in short sleeves and tank tops as well. Not shirtless today, but there are some short sleeves out there in the early warm-up.
Debo wasn't wearing the short yellow the leather Daisy Dukes, was he?
No, not today.
I didn't think so. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. JD will keep giving us our KNBR weather report from the KNBR Weather Center because Raph did the morning shift. That's how he's already out of here.
I would say
Raph's already gone. So JD's on the KNBR Weather Center report today. We got more to come here on 49er pregame show. Niners and the Bills, a 5:20 kickoff. On the call, our guy Greg Papa and Tim Ryan. We'll go up to the broadcast booth and check in with them in just a little while before we hand it over about 4:20. Adam Copeland, JD with you, who is live from Orchard Park where the Niners take on the Bills. We'll get you some scores from around the NFC and the NFL next as the Rams have just taken the lead over the New Orleans Saints. We'll tell you what happened with Arizona and Seattle earlier today as well. More to come on the Sports Leader. 12 men on the field.
Again?
Defense.
Again?
5-yard penalty. Second down.
After a dead ball penalty, how do you re-huddle 12 and leave 12 on the field?
And they're all out there, too.
That was tough, though. I actually lined up with 12. I counted them on TV. They're like 1, 2, 3. You got Tom Brady circling them. You're like, why are there like 6 linebackers back there? What the hell's going on? Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. JD live from Orchard Park. Niners and the Bills coming your way at 5:20 right here on KNBR. And in terms of things that have been frustrating this year for the Niners or things that they've not done well, that was up there for me just because you can't regress in areas of mental errors. Like, you can make physical mistakes. Physical mistakes happen. It's pro sports. Injuries happen. That stuff starts to bite you, especially when you've been as successful as they have. But self-inflicted mental errors, things like that, especially right after a dead ball penalty. The last couple of weeks have been so frustrating. The 3 defensive penalties on 3 consecutive plays 2 weeks ago in the game against Seattle and then last week against Green Bay. For a team that was one of the least penalized in football, they were as sloppy as can be in the last couple of weeks. And it plays to why they lost to Seattle. It's not the reason, but I actually said against Seattle, that was against Tampa in the second half, the 3 consecutive penalties. They pulled that one out, but it's been a tough go of it last couple of weeks in terms of slop, JD.
Well, it just the margin for error is the part of it. I mean, this team's got less margin for error. When you have less margin for error, you got to be more buttoned up. And this team has not been buttoned up enough, consistently enough to offset the fact that they, whether it's the injuries or just the roster composition, they haven't had as much talent actually on the field through the first 11 games as they would have hoped. And the talent that they have had on the field has not performed at the level that they would have hoped or needed to consistently. Now, that being said, it's the 3 games they kicked away in the division that, we mentioned it to Larry. If they win those 3 games, maybe this is that 9-2, 8-3 showdown, but they haven't. And a big part of the reason why they haven't has been penalties, inattention to detail, sloppy situational football in the red zone, and as was the case last week, as they were trying to get back into the game after getting dominated early, the turnover battle. You lose the turnover battle, but you lose it in a fashion where it's 3 turnovers for 3 touchdowns going back the other way, and that's just not a recipe to have success.
So the Niners enter play today in 4th place in the NFC West. Now, just a quick look at what's going on across the NFL Week 13. A
little help, but then didn't get a little help.
A little help and then didn't get a little help. So Seattle wins. They remain in first place in the NFC West. They go out to New York. And by the way, that game almost got away from a couple of different times. They went down 14-0 early in that game, a couple of big turnovers. Their punter, who's also their placeholder for kicking, injured himself. And so they were pretty dicey with kicks. They had a kick blocked. At one point, Rodgers threw a crucial pick in the red zone that got returned for a pick 6. And so Seattle ends up winning. Arizona ends up falling today. So Niners get a little bit of help. I mean, is Seattle the best team in this division? The NFC West is having a mediocre off. Arizona falls 23-22. Still a big factor, I think, in the West.
I don't think they're the most talented team, and by any stretch, and I still think that's the 49ers, even with some of the injuries. But Seattle, at this point, I mean, they beat Arizona. Arizona's handled the Rams this year. Everybody's beaten the Niners and gotten their pound of flesh. But no, the big one today, as much as they didn't get the help from the Jets, it looked like they were going to get the help from the Jets, was the comeback in Minnesota. The Cardinals had a 19-6 lead in that game late in the third quarter, and the Vikings end up scoring the final 17 points, or they score 17 of the final 20 points in that game, and there was a back and forth late where the Cardinals had to settle for a field goal, only up 6, and Aaron Jones able to take it in from Sam Darnold with a minute and 13 to go. So they get a little help as the Cardinals lose the game that the Niners lost on their schedule in Minnesota earlier in the year, and the Cardinals are now 6-6. So you got to catch Arizona before you can catch Seattle now, with Seattle at 7-5, but every loss is paramount right now, whether it's the Rams who have taken the lead, as you mentioned, or Arizona or Seattle here down the stretch. It leads to that scenario that I've mentioned a couple of times, to where the 49ers could even lose today. I know nobody wants to think about that as much as this game on paper is a difficult task, and still be in it in the division at 5-7 if they could come home and beat the Bears and beat the Rams 7-7 going on the road. You're still going to be within a game, I would bet, either way, if you win those 2 on December 12th.
Well, we did that pregame show together before the Seattle game, and we showed up, and you and I were in the studio down at Levi Stadium, and I said to you, I bought my ticket yesterday for the and booked my hotel for Arizona, final week of the season. I thought this game might be meaningful. It still might be meaningful, but I keep joking with you week to week. I'm still holding on to it for at least the time being. Like I
haven't canceled mine yet either. I haven't canceled mine yet either for January 5th.
Because there's an outside shot. Like if it means something for Arizona, don't think I'll be there to see the Niners play spoiler. But if it does mean something for the Niners, we'll both be there for the pre and post game show. But to your point exactly, like nobody's running away with this thing. Arizona blows that lead. They had a 19-6 lead. I think you said it was. They ended up losing 23-22. Seattle ends up winning, but they don't own tie breaks with everybody. They still have to see. They can see Arizona again next week. The Rams right now, by the way, lead New Orleans. They just got into the end zone. They're in the fourth quarter now, and they're up 21-14, 2 minutes to play. New Orleans has the ball, and they are driving. So we'll see what happens, see if the Niners get some help. But I'm sort of overlooking at the scoreboard. It's sort of fool's gold at this point anyway, because it all just comes back to the Niners having to win games. None of that matters if the Niners don't pick up wins against teams they need to beat. And again, they've shown no form of consistency to allow you to think they can be something they aren't to this point.
No, they haven't. And look, the games against the Bears and the Rams wouldn't be a picnic, but there is still the win-out scenario in play. And look, I think the Niners are capable of beating the Bears. I think they're capable of beating the Rams, those two games at Levi's. I think they're capable of going on the road and winning at Miami. And at that point, you'd be 8-7 going into the Monday night game against the Lions. Now, given what we've seen from those two teams this year, we'll see how much the Lions need that game. It looks like they probably will need that game to keep Philadelphia at bay, although Philadelphia, I'm looking at them, they're leading at Baltimore right now in the fourth
quarter.
They're
up 14-12, and
12.
Justin Tucker missed another field goal. I don't know what happened to that guy. That guy was the best kicker of all time, and now he's struggling this year.
No, it goes to show. So, we'll see if the Lions need that one or not. I think that's a bad matchup for the Niners. Obviously, the Lions with their offense and the way that they've played this year, but we'll see how that looks in 29 days if the 49ers end up in a meaningful spot there. And I would like the Niners' chances if it was a win-and-get-in scenario in Arizona in Week 18. But the reality is also goes to show that if they can somehow pick this game off tonight, they would be in really good shape at 6-6. At least you would feel that way with the games ahead at Levi's next week and on Thursday.
And the Bears, you said it, no picnic that game next week. And the Niners will see the Bears for the first time. They'll be off of a long week, by the way. They played on Thursday, and the Niners will see
and the fired coach.
And
bump.
the fired coach. You love the dead cat pounce for a team that just fires their coach. So everything's boding well for the 49ers as Brock Purdy's expected to play today. No Nick Bosa, no Trent Williams, no Demo Lenore, no Aaron Banks, but you will have Charvarius Ward back out there for the first time in several weeks as he rejoined the team a couple of weeks ago. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson, JD live from Orchard Park where the Niners are taking on the Bills. We'll check in with the broadcast booth. Tim Ryan, Greg Papa will be on the call today. We'll hand it over to them in about a half an hour. Still to come, the 49er Player Spotlight, the Steve Young Show, and our conversation with the broadcast booth. All coming your way, only here on The Sports Leader. Adam Copeland back with your 49er Player Spotlight. Week 13 pits the Niners against a Super Bowl contender and an MVP candidate in the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. Our spotlight today is going to be on a 49er defensive lineman, an edge rusher, Leonard Floyd, who was brought in to be the edge rusher opposite Nick Bosa, who's going to be out today for the second straight game with a hip and oblique injury, so he won't be out there today. Leonard Floyd, all eyes on him in stopping a tough running quarterback, something the Niners have struggled against for many years, in Josh Allen, who, by the way, 5 rushing touchdowns on the ground for Allen this year. He's second on the team in rushing, and he had his most carries of the season with 12 last week in the victory against Kansas City, the first loss for Kansas City in 2024. Leonard Floyd's our 49er Player Spotlight today, having to be a leader of the defense. What did he have to say on slowing down that Buffalo offense and facing Josh Allen?
I ain't gonna lie, it's gonna be a tough week. Gotta have the right mindset with this one, just from being on the same team with him. He's a very competitive quarterback, and you got to be at a high level. You got to match his level. But yeah, it's gonna be a great matchup, and I'm going out. I'm giving it my all I got, and hopefully I ring him, and bring him down.
Leonard Floyd there is our 49er Player of the Week as well on KNBR. Used to be a Buffalo Bill, and he's going to have to be a leader of the defense, specifically on the line today. They'll be down another defensive interior lineman in Jordan Elliott. So 6.5 sacks on the season, 6 tackle for loss. Those are both second on the team for the 49ers. They'll be looking for a veteran to step up against a very tough Buffalo offense and one of the best in the league in Josh Allen, and that's why Leonard Floyd is this week's 49er Player Spotlight. Steve Young, the Hall of Famer, the best half hour in sports radio, joins our afternoon drive show every Wednesday at 5:30 in the evening. And this past week, Steve had some thoughts about the 49ers injury situation and playing through a Super Bowl hangover, or what is perceived to be that, at least right now. He talked about how high-priced players not being out there puts a lot more pressure on the rest of the team.
And that adds pressure in every direction, because then all of a sudden you're not getting the ball back as many times. You don't get the big stop that you normally get. And it really does come. We've said this. The money was invested into the defensive line.
Yep.
We should be top 5 in the league. And what that means is we bring the havoc with 4 guys. And when you do that, You've seen that havoc. You've seen you see how it helps the offense, how it helps the special teams, how it flips the field all the time. It's like a constant security blanket that when you lose it, you have to go the distance so that many more times. You only touch the ball 3 or 4 times and a half, and that's. I do worry about this, and I go back to BC before Christmas and after Christmas last year and our pass rush, and we have not. And now we've lost through injury. It does worry me that we are not going to be a top 10 pass rushing football team.
But no, my optimism is not broken by any means. We still have a lot of very talented players. We will get some guys back. And I still have full trust in this coaching staff to put our guys in position to make plays, and I got no worry about that. But definitely uphill grind, and gonna see what we're made of, which I'm looking forward to.
That was George Kittle last week after the Niners lost 38-10 to the Packers. Nothing is going to stop his optimism. And a guy, I think it's Greg Papa's going to join us. He's on the call today. Greg, who would you say is our George Kittle here at KNBR? Who's the eternal optimist here for us?
Certainly not Mike Holder.
No, absolutely. Are you kidding me? Absolutely
I would say
not.
JD. No, I wouldn't say JD. Greg Silver.
Greg Silver's an optimist.
I might be. I'm not an optimist. I'm not a pessimist. I'm a realist. And we have a scenario where the Niners, even if they lose the game tonight, they still could win the NFC West in a 4-way tie at 9-8. Now, How are the Rams doing? They took the lead in New Orleans last
They
time
won.
I checked.
They just finished it off. How about this? Sean McVay now more wins than any head coach in history for the Rams.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to go back. Chuck Knox, who also coached these Buffalo Bills, was a pretty good coach there for years. But anyway, Arizona losing by a point to Minnesota. Seattle able to get off the field. So this is going to be a hard game. It's not an unwinnable game. Buffalo is obviously winners of 6 in a row, and they've won all 5 home games, scoring 30 or more in every game. But they are slow starters, so I think you want to get off to a good start here. If the Bills do struggle, they do struggle in first quarters. You certainly don't want to fall behind, but we are in a winter wonderland. It's even different than the game we had at Lambeau in January 20th of 2022, because that game, it didn't start snowing until halftime, and then it snowed the entire second half, and it's been snowing here in the southern tier where they get all the snow in western New York. Right here, they got 2 feet since yesterday, and it let off a little bit. Right now they got the sweepers out on the field trying to sweep some of the snow, but they can't sweep during the game itself. So we may have, I'm going to rely on the young eyes of Tim Ryan to tell me what yard line the ball is on, because it may be snow covered.
Yeah, and you would anticipate, Pop, knowing the area so well that, like you were saying before we got on, once it starts, it typically doesn't stop for a couple of hours.
In the southern tier, it's a lake effect snowstorm. So you get a cloud that just hovers over Lake Erie, and it just sits there, and all the moisture from the lake goes up into the cloud, and then it gets just so heavy, and then usually it is a northerly wind that blows it from Canada down to the southern tier. Like the city of Buffalo, where the 49ers stayed, we hardly got any snow.
Yeah.
The 49ers had their walkthrough at the University at Buffalo, they called it. When I was here, it was University of Buffalo, UB. But in any event, that's north of the city. It was an indoor facility, but no snow there at all. We didn't see snow till we left the hotel, about a 5-minute ride. All of a sudden, it started to pile up. And then, when the one thing about tonight, the wind is not bad. This is actually very calm. When you see the snow coming straight down like it is now, and it's a very light snow. This is the latest Buffalo has ever had their first snowfall. They always get one in November. Hell, when I was a kid, we got one before October. Just about every year, but with global warming and climate change, it's coming later. So this is the first snowfall they've had of any kind in western New York. It's a very light, fluffy. You don't want to ski or make a snowball in this kind of snow. And when you see it coming straight down, that means the wind's not blowing too bad.
Yeah, and there was anticipated potentially 20-mile-an-hour winds. I was looking, it's more 6 to 8 miles an hour, and the flags on the field, they're not really moving.
The tunnel where the players come out of, they actually leave that tunnel open like Old Giant Stadium. So kicking towards those uprights are more challenging than kicking away from those uprights.
What's your sense as far as Brock Purdy's ability to make an impact throwing the ball with that shoulder?
He's fine. This weather is built, though, for the fireballer from Fireball, Josh, who did grow up in Central California and then went on to Wyoming. I was watching him warm up, and it's just I've never seen him have a ball be taken by the winds here, and he's only played in a couple of snow games in his career. Brock's going to be fine. We'll look and see if he's wearing a glove for pregame warm-ups. You'd rather have it be snow, I think, than rain, like we had in Cleveland on the shores of Lake Drury last year when the Niners lost and Brock had a hard time. Then the Packer playoff game when he actually put a glove on his left hand. Normally, it's the wind in this stadium. We'll see. The one thing is, and now you know why Tom Brady deflated footballs, the balls get hard as a rock. And when he played that one playoff game against the Indianapolis Colts and Andrew Luck, it was really cold. We're not that bad. What's the temperature? In the high 20s? So it's usually when it snows like this, it's not real cold. It's 29 degrees right now. So we'll see. I think he'll be able to grip it and rip it tonight like Brock.
Greg, I saw the actives and the inactives came out. One of the interesting notes there is Brandon Allen going to be the emergency third QB, so he'll dress but not active. Josh Dobbs listed as the number 2 today.
Yeah, that's interesting. He did have the broken left middle finger, going back a few weeks ago. I think in a game like this, the one thing is the emergency third cannot come in until the fourth quarter. Okay. So if you want to make a change and just bring him in for a package or so, he can only do that as the second. And just running around. The one thing Buffalo is vulnerable to is the run. They do not play the run well. They are going to get their all-pro linebacker Matt Milano back. He hasn't played in 420 days since he tore his bicep in August and broke a leg in London last October the 8th. He's light, though. Terrell Bernard will be on the field the whole game. He's their green dot middle linebacker. Dorian Williams plays the run a little bit, but they play more nickel defense where they have 3 corners on the field, and sometimes they have 6 defensive backs. They play a lot of dime, and Taron Johnson, one of the best nickel backs in football. So, yeah, I think you want Dobbs up as the number 2 for the running threat a little bit. And then, the other side of it is just being able to run the ball against this team. And then, Taron Johnson's a very good tackling nickelback. I think the key to the game tonight is Demo Lenore. Yeah, the Niners don't have 5 starters tonight. Right. And that's not even talking about not having Brandon Ayuk and the Gravedigger. You have 5 starters out tonight. I think a lot, obviously, not having Nick and Trent are huge, and not having Aaron Banks at left guard is huge. Your whole left side of the offensive line is going to be different tonight. Jalen Moore played well last week, and then obviously Ben Barch will start at left guard. But not having Diamador Lenore as your nickel back to match up with Khalil Shakir, who was Buffalo's number 1 pass catcher, 56 catches on the year, and he works out of the slot a lot. What you're going to see tonight is number 35, who you've never seen play defense before for the Niners. He's only played on special teams. Nick McLeod will be, and keep that between us, will be in on first and second down in the nickel. He'll be the inside nickel back. And then when they go, when they get to third down and you want a little more pass coverage, Renardo Green will kick inside. But Nick made 16 starts in his career with the New York Giants. He does play well in there, so he'll be in on first and second down. Then Green will go inside on third down.
Do you anticipate, Pop, that the Bills are really going to look to run the ball the way other teams have tried to run the ball? We talked about it last week. You knew Green Bay was going to come out and just hammer. You think Buffalo looks to do that? It's an improved running game for them over the last couple of years.
I was just talking to Kelly Skipper, who's been in this league forever as a running back coach, 8th year with the Bills. This whole staff has been together since Sean McDermott took over as the Buffalo head coach, and he's been in the NFL as a head coach as long as Kyle. And Aaron Cromer has been here 5 years, really good offensive line coach we know well. They are running the ball. I think the big difference in going from Ken Dorsey when they fired him after the Monday night home loss to Denver and going to Joe Barry is they are committed to the run game. They will run the ball. They have different backs. James Cook is a good back. The guy who's the tackle breaker is Ray Davis. He's had 20 missed tackles he's been able to force this year. James Cook has gotten stronger in his legs. He was an 1,100-yard rusher last year, JD, and so far this year, 596. He scored 10 rushing touchdowns already this year. And one thing they'll do when it's third or fourth and short or second and short, they'll do what Mike Tirico calls the Buffalo snowplow, which is their version of the tush push, the brotherly shove. And Josh Allen is so great at it. So you have to worry about the quarterback. They're not doing as many design runs with Josh this year, but you'll see quarterback sneaks and quarterback powers, and they'll run zone read. And then when they get into those short down and distances, they'll just line him up and try to quick snap you and run the Buffalo snowplow.
By the way, this is all part of our Keys to the Game, sponsored by Bay Area Chevy Dealers. Visit BayAreaChevroletDealers.com. We were talking earlier, Greg, that if the Niners are to win this game, and by the way, Josh Allen, his first 7 games this year, no interceptions. He cut down on them a lot, 18 touchdowns, 5 picks, but in the last 4 games, he does have 5. They score a lot of points. If the Niners are to win this game, when we look back, what will have happened?
Josh will throw you the ball, but we thought that last week against Jordan Love, and he threw a couple that should have been intercepted in the game, and Renardo Green just couldn't bring in a ricocheted ball, and Jair Brown undercut a route and couldn't get it. He has been more discerning with the football. When you look at his last few years, 18, 14, 15, 10, 9, 12 interceptions. This year only 5, but as you say, he didn't throw one to the Seattle game, and now he's starting to bunch them up. He threw a bad one on the screen to Kansas City. So he has thrown, the 5 in the last 4 games or so. Him turning the ball over is obviously a key, and then just let him watch the game. I mean, you're coming to Buffalo. It's snowy. It's not as windy. You got to get the running game going. I think the key is Christian McCaffrey growing up in suburban Denver, loving to play in snow. Not all running backs can run in snow, and this is a synthetic turf, so the guys will wear basically the same cleats they wear at home. It's not frozen, the field, at least not yet, but they do. As I say that, Jake Moody just slipped trying a field goal from midfield.
It looks slick. It looks slick. I wasn't down there, but
and Jake did slip on the opening kickoff in Green Bay. I would say this field is colder than Lambeau Field was, JD. When I was on it, it appeared to be okay. But it is a night game. We're going to kick this game off in an hour. It's going to be 8:20 when we kick it off. It'll begin in the 20s, but it'll dip down probably in the low 20s and teens. But you do have to worry about slippage and make sure the guys have the right cleats.
Pop, final one for me. If there's a wrinkle offensively for the Niners, you talked about the running game, but if there's a wrinkle tonight, something to look for, what would it be from the Niners offense?
Yeah, I think just executing overall, just getting back to what they do. They're going to run a lot of 21 personnel tonight. Kyle Juszczyk, I think, is going to be on the field a lot. As we say, Buffalo loves to play with 3 corners. They also play 3 safeties. They'll use a dime a lot. I want to see how they rotate Matt Milano in tonight. You would think, in theory, they would have Dorian Williams, the linebacker, in for the rundowns, and then bring in Milano. And with Milano and Bernard, those guys are really fast. Their corners are good. Christian Benford's a really good player. Rasul Douglas, who did play in the nickel early in his career in Philadelphia and Carolina. We knew him in Green Bay the last couple of years, and then last half year in Buffalo. So I think overall, just being able to run the ball at this light box, they don't put a lot of big guys in there, and Milano's an undersized guy. So I think the wrinkle is just to execute a lot of 21 personnel with Kyle Juszczyk on the field and just try to run the ball at this team.
Greg, have a great call. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you, guys.
See you, man. Greg Papa and Tim Ryan will be on the call. We'll hand it over to them in just a couple of minutes here. JD, anything change in your mind in terms of weather? I mean, when you sat down, snow was not falling. You were fairly confident. Even Matt Maiocco said to us, the field condition, you may not be able to even notice that it had snowed here just because of how they covered it and how they cleaned it up. Then you showed us on video what the field looked like about half hour or so ago. There were some slick spots, and then Greg Papa saying just now, Jake Moody attempting a kick and falling down. You don't like seeing or hearing any of that stuff. This is what we talked about with the weather maybe playing a role in leveling some of the playing field.
Yeah, it looks slick. Again, I didn't have a chance to get down on the field. They still had the tarp on when I got here earlier, but it looks slick. There's a light coating, which I would imagine they'll look to plow or sweep here once the players leave the field in that final half hour between the warm-up and kickoff. And then, like Greg was saying, once you get going, you won't be sweeping it once the game goes. So it could be a light dusting. The snow has stopped, by the way. It's kind of lightly fallen for 5 to 10 minutes and then stopped for maybe 15 to 20. That's been the pattern here really for the last hour or 90 minutes or so. Light coating on the field right now as Jake Moody and the kickers are out for both teams, and we'll see. I've talked to a few people that think it's supposed to be mostly light or stop, and then you talk to others that say, no, it's going to be coming all night long here, off and on.
Well, just to catch everybody, Brock Purdy expected to play today. He is going to be out there to start, and you just heard Greg Papa say, yeah, he's going to be okay. So you expect that since he's out there, he'll be able to do everything the offense needs, or that they're planning to hopefully win this game. Now, Josh Dobbs is listed as the number 2 quarterback today. He will be out there. For some reason, Brock can't go. Brandon Allen listed as the number 3 emergency guy. No Nick Bosa, no Trent Williams, no Aaron Banks, no Demo Lenore in this one. So some unfamiliar faces for you out there. And Nick McLeod, a guy that both Larry Krueger and Greg Papa told us we need to pay attention to today. Number 35, Nick McLeod out there making his 13th start. Ben Barch, the big inactive, active today starting at left guard. John Dickinson is live from Buffalo at Orchard Park. We've got coming your way the Niners and the Bills. We'll be back with you on postgame only here on the Sports Leader.